Hello, my name is Porter Herold, and I'm an undergraduate researcher at Kansas State University, and my PIRE summer research project was over NMR and SEM applied to polymer-derived ceramics. So on today's agenda, I'll be talking about polymer-derived ceramics. I'll be talking about the NMR application for these polymer-derived ceramics. I'll be talking about my own lab research related to PDCs. So my summer research had two parts to it, literature review and lab work. And for my literature review, I gave bi-weekly presentations about the literature. And so I've given 3 presentations. The first was on July 1st over spectroscopy, atoms, and spin. The second over basically all things NMR on July 13th. And then on July 29th, I gave a presentation over NMR applied to polymer-derived ceramics. So now that we've learned about the properties and the benefits of PDCs and low-temperature polymer processing, I will talk about the synthesis of PDCs in detail, and I'm going to use polysiloxane as an example. So when we synthesize these, we start with a liquid oligomer, and one thing to note here is that we do use a cross-linking agent, but this is a catalyst, and so the reactions that it creates are very short-lived, and so we aren't picturing them here, but keep in mind that they are there. It does happen. So like I said, we'll start with the liquid oligomers, and then we will cross-link them. And so the vinyl groups in the liquid oligomers, those bonds are going to break, and they'll burn off. And so then we'll get this kind of organic amorphous structure. And so these silicon oxygen rings are going to bond together via those broken vinyl group bonds. And that's, of course, an average. This is amorphous. There are lots of possibilities. It's possible that rings might break. In that example right here with the oxygen, a ring broke. But on an average, the broken vinyl group bonds are going to be what bond the liquid oligomers, the rings, together. And so then after this, we will pyrolyze them at an even higher temperature. And the methyl groups are going to burn off, and we'll be left with this with carbon and the silicon oxygen rings. And so those rings will be bonded via those carbons, those broken bonds from the methyl groups, and we'll have our inorganic amorphous ceramic structure. And how do we know any of this is happening? We know because of nuclear magnetic resonance. But before I talk about that, I'll talk about my own lab research, the second part of my summer project. And so instead of polysiloxane, I actually used polysilazane, and I spun fibers. So we utilized polyacrylic acid, or PAA, as a spinning agent. We added the polymeric ceramic precursor, that's polysilazane, and that's structure right there. And then we added the cross-linking agent, the catalyst, dihumyl peroxide, or DCP, and that's its structure right here. And we've also added water. And generally what we'll do is we'll make a solution of our polymeric ceramic precursor and cross-linking agent. We'll do 1 or 10 weight % DCP in silazane, as you can see right there. And so our process starts with the polyacrylic acid. We put that into a cup, we measure it out, and then we'll add our polysilazane with 10 weight % dihumyl peroxide here, and then we'll start to add water drop by drop. And so that helps us to make a slurry or a sol gel with the correct viscosity for drawing fibers. Once we have that, we'll actually put that slurry or that sol gel on a popsicle stick and use a pair of tweezers to stretch the fibers across an aluminum foil boat. And so we use this aluminum foil boat because the aluminum foil won't deform during the cross-linking, so the fibers will stay nice and tight and they won't get damaged. So once we've spun all the fibers, they're going to look something like this. They're a little bit difficult to see, but then we will we'll cross-link them at 160 degrees Celsius, and they'll look something like this. So these are our cross-linked polysilazane fibers. So our next step will be to pyrolyze those. So we'll collect them and place them in these ceramic boats for pyrolysis, and we will put them into our furnace, and we'll pyrolyze between 600 and 1,000 degrees Celsius. And then once they're pyrolyzed, they'll look something like this. They'll be black and they will have shrunk a little bit. But these are our pyrolyzed fibers. And so once we've synthesized the fibers, now we can begin to analyze them. So we'll use 2 tools. First, we will use SEM, or scanning electron microscopy. And with scanning electron microscopy, we're wanting to see that physical transformation from the polymeric green body fibers to the ceramic fibers. So we're wanting to see that physical transformation, what changes occur. And then we're also looking for fiber quality. Uniformity is preferred. If we were to say make a composite with these fibers, we want to have fibers that are uniform, that have the same mechanical properties across the board. So we're also looking for that fiber quality. And so as an example, these are pictures prior to pyrolysis and after pyrolysis for one of my samples. So on the left here, yes, I have this green body polymeric fiber, and then on the right here, I have the pyrolyzed ceramic fiber, the same fiber. And so as you can see, this is a good example of this transformation. We've got polymeric fibers here, and then the pyrolyzed ceramic fibers here they haven't deformed. They still have a fairly smooth surface texture. They're fairly quality fibers. And of course, we won't get these nice results all the time. Sometimes we might get something more like this. On the left here, I have our good example of some more quality fibers, and on the right here, I have what looks more like a jungle. So on the left here, what we're looking for as far as fiber quality is a low diameter distribution, a high aspect ratio, smooth surface texture, little to no porosity. That's what we're looking for. And this on the left here, they're fairly smooth. They're not porous. We have a little bit of diameter distribution, but that's more of a result of the hand spinning than anything else. And then we have little coiling and little kinking in these fibers. But on the right here, we have unfortunately a very low aspect ratio, very short fibers. We have a very high diameter distribution. We have very large fibers and very short, very large fibers and very thin fibers. And then we've got a lot of coiling, a lot of tangling here. And so this is a fairly low quality image here. And so once we've done this analysis for these physical properties using SEM, we can do a chemical analysis with the nuclear magnetic resonance. So it's important to note that the nuclear magnetic resonance that I did was not over the fibers themselves, but the materials that we used to make the fibers. So we did NMR on the polysilazane with 1% dicumyl peroxide liquid. We did it on the plain dicumyl peroxide, that's a solid, and we did it on the cross-linked polysilazane, and that was also a solid. So first here I have pictured as the hydrogen NMR for the solution of polysilazane with 1% DCP. And based on the literature and based on my own assumptions and my own research here, we can see that our peaks do in fact correspond with the predicted structure for our polysilazane. We've got silicon bonded to a methyl group, silicon bonded to the vinyl group, and nitrogen bonded to the hydrogen. And we also have DCP over here, these very small peaks. It's only 1%, so it's not going to be a huge player, but that's also there. So that does confirm, and yes, based on literature and research, does confirm that we are working with our polysilazane. Our next NMR is a carbon-13 NMR for dicumyl peroxide, a solid. And once again, based on the literature and my own research, we can see that the peaks correspond to our structure, our predicted structure for dicumyl peroxide. We've got our carbons in the benzene ring here, a carbon in the center here bonded to the benzene ring in the two methyl groups, and of course we have our methyl groups. And then finally, we've got our NMR spectroscopy for the cross-linked silazane, and this is probably one of the more important ones. This is after cross-linking. So we have a solid, we have that more amorphous structure, and that's so it's difficult to actually draw a super accurate structure for this because it is amorphous. There's lots of possibilities. So what we will look at is our peaks and what the peaks would imply about the bonds in that cross-linked solid. And that's of course based on the literature. And so here in this particular graph, we've got a peak that corresponds to what we believe to be silicon bonded to a methyl group, which will most definitely happen in our cross-linked silazane. We also have two silicons that are bonded together via 3 methyl groups, which if you think back to that siloxane example, that does make sense. We have those silicon and oxygen rings bonded via those methyl groups, and so that also makes a lot of sense for this cross-linked solid. And we also have carbon-carbon bonds, and that would also make sense for a cross-linked silazane. So now that we've done our NMR analysis, in summary, I talked about the polymer-derived ceramics. I talked about the synthesis of those polymer-derived ceramics in detail. I talked about my own lab research related to PDCs and the NMR application for that. And then in the future, I'll be actually making composite fibers with graphene oxide in order to improve the toughness. There's been research out there already that graphene oxide added to a polymer can improve mechanical properties. So that's what I'll be doing in the future. So I want to say thank you to the National Science Foundation, the PIRE project. I want to say thank you to Kansas State University Women in Engineering. And also a special thank you to my two advisors, Dr. Gurpreet Singh and Dr. Crystal Gervais. Thank you for watching.